How are you? My name is Dr. Arati Rao, and I'm a cardiac psychologist. And we'll get into what all that means, because I'm sure some of you are wondering what in the world does that mean, so we will get there. But what I'd like to do is start with something else. We're going to have some fun today. So 2 things. One is just one of the essentials is a sign-up sheet. If you can give me your name and the email and just pass this along. And I'm passing something else around. These are little dots that I'm passing around. I want you to put them on right here. I'll show you. Yeah, you're going to put it on just right there, like between your thumb and your forefinger. Okay? I know some of you are wondering, like, dots. Here she's this Indian lady coming up and she's telling us to use dots, but I'm not going to ask you to put it on your forehead, okay? You don't see one on my forehead, do you? So I'm not going to ask you to do that. Okay. So here are the, so just peel one off and put it right where I showed you. Yeah, please. And we'll talk more about what these dots are. We'll have some fun. And when the dots come around, I'm going to pass around this little sheet that tells you what each color means. This is like a mood dot. It's called a stress dot, but it's like a mood ring. How many of you are familiar with a mood ring? All right. So it's going to change colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you verbally what the colors mean, and then I'm going to pass this card around. But this is, you got to get this back to me because I just have one of these right now. So anyway, if it's black, it means very tense. If it's amber, which is kind of like an orange brown, you'll see it's a range of colors. That means tense. And then yellow is unsettled. Green is involved. Now, if you're between yellow and green to start out with, yellow makes sense because you don't know me. And I know you do, but a lot of people don't know me, and you're like, what does she have to say? Do I really want to sit here for an hour from 3 to 4 and listen to this woman just talk? So you're not really fully involved, so you might just be in the unsettled range, which is fine, okay? I'm hoping to get you to the involved stage so that you can participate in this lecture. And then the next one is turquoise, which is relaxing. We're going to do some exercises, and I'm hoping that that's going to get you relaxed. How many of you are relaxed already? Oh my, what am I doing here with the relaxed group? Gee.
After exercising now we're
You're relaxed after exercising, right? And then the last one is blue, which is calm. So I'm going to pass it around, check the color on your skin, and it should be almost immediate.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You're still
According to this, I am. I didn't think I would.
That's the interesting part of it, that your body will register the truth, and you may think you're relaxed, and sometimes we're tenser. I buy them from a place called Stress, like a stress stop. It's called StressStop.com. So, but you can buy them, I think, in other places. I'm not sure.
What is it? Stress stop?
Stress Stop. But there are other places too that have it.
I'll put that down.
Yeah.
Did you finish the vanilla?
Water. You're worried about
Okay.
I don't know.
Dots are coming around. So please wear your dots, and then we'll get it.
We pass the dot back here.
There we go.
You can even just use your mood ring, it probably will do the job. I'm not so sure, but anyway.
You know what, mine is turning more and more green.
What readings are people getting?
Green, thank you.
Did you just wash your hands or anything? Because if
You're
it's
definitely
cold, then
green.
it won't.
Yeah, but you know what,
Show me
it
what
was
it
half.
is.
That's it, it wasn't
Move
good.
it, move it around
And
a
what's
bit.
amber?
Oh, put it on the other?
And, yeah, put it on your other
Okay.
hand a little
I'll
bit
tell
more.
you.
Let's see what comes up.
I'm leaning more
Black is very
towards
stressed.
Yellow
is not
green.
You know what, my mood is changing.
Yeah,
Green,
see,
not
it's
brighter green.
Oh, geez.
yeah.
Now
Now
it's
it's,
calm.
it's getting
Getting
brown.
much better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to keep it forever.
I've done this
before.
before.
No.
Purple, I
Now
guess.
it's
that's
more like a brownish amber.
Of course, if it
Cards
doesn't register,
going
it means you're
around.
dead. So that's
Yeah.
that's how it's not
Green,
dead.
take this one, I'll grab another.
Okay, thank you.
Usually
black. Sweet over here.
Oh, yeah.
You are green, green, that's very good,
You
relax.
said you were
Please
relaxed.
relax.
in here because I'm gonna be lazy. Okay.
That's excellent. You just woke
No,
up.
I
so-
haven't. Because he works like
What's in
1
your
hour
coffee?
hours.
So.
Can we get one more dot back here?
A dot, yeah. Sure.
No, I'm filming.
My husband being on this
Well, it did change, it got lighter, but then
I
that
had
changed from
contacts
there.
right here. I forgot my glasses.
Thank you.
You know what this says?
Yeah.
I can't.
That's
Okay.
greenish, greenish yellow.
Put it right here.
Wow, you're a real nice green.
Yeah.
Unsettled.
Unsettled. So you're still carrying,
Fire.
you're kind of on
Came
edge.
from work.
Yeah,
I was
so
like
you
rushing
haven't
to get
had a
out there.
chance to fully relax, you know? That's why. Okay, so let's get started here. And hi everyone. Now, earlier I introduced myself and said I'm a cardiac psychologist. Anybody know what that means, or are you kind of wondering what in the world does that mean? Anybody want to take a shot at it?
To
Okay.
deal with the after effects of going through cardiac surgery or
Yeah. Part of it, yes.
I don't think it's even only after effects, I think it's just preventative. Like I started going to Dr. Rath and it should have continued. I didn't think my insurance would, but she was wonderful. But I think it's just preventative and informational too, right?
It's all of the above, because the research shows, especially now, there's more and more and more research. Like everybody used to know that, you know, if you have a heart event, of course you're gonna be stressed out and depressed or upset or whatever, that's like a no-brainer. But now they are saying that if you're already stressed and depressed, there's a lot of studies coming out, you are at 3 to 4 times at risk, higher risk of a cardiac event than you would be if you were not, okay? So my job is not just to teach you to, you know, just to relax, but also to empower yourself and learn the intricacies of the mind and learn how you can participate in your own healing and in your own wellness. Like a lot of us, let me give you an analogy of what is the mind-body connection, for instance, okay? If you think about a car, how much maintenance do we do on our car? If we didn't do that maintenance, what would happen to your car? If we just said, oh, I'm only going to drive this brand new car I bought, and you know, if it breaks down, oh, so be it. We'll just take it to the store and we take it to the auto place and get it fixed. If we have that kind of thinking, then we don't pick up on the signs that something's going wrong with the car, and then it really needs major repairs. So similarly with the body, how many of you believe that the body gives us signals that something's wrong? How many of you can buy into that? That things just don't happen overnight, am I right? It's not like today you're in 100% great health and then tomorrow, boom, you know, something happens. It doesn't happen that way. There are many, many signals, just like your car gives little signals, you know, sometimes you have trouble starting it, sometimes it's spluttering, then you kind of know you might need an oil change, or maybe your brakes are not working as well. So it gives you little warning signs. But the trouble is, folks, that we don't heed those warning signs. Do you agree with that we don't heed them? Okay, we don't. We just think, oh, well, if something breaks, then of course we're going to go get it fixed. But you're here to learn what is the mind and body connection. Anybody can answer that question? What is the connection? Like I have some patients who show up and say, you know, they've been asked to come because their cardiologist sent them to me, and then they're like, they come kicking and screaming, and they're like, Doc, it's my heart that I've had a problem with, not my head. I don't know what I'm doing here. And they're very angry that they've been sent. And I always say to people, well, do you think, like, these two operate independent of each other? Like, how many people think that? There are some people who think that the body has got nothing to do with the mind and vice versa. And today you're going to learn how much it has a lot to do with. It's like your car and the driver. The driver really has a lot to do with how long your car is going to last and what kind of maintenance it gets and everything else, isn't it? If you're a very conscientious driver who takes care of their car, your car is going to give you more mileage. If you don't care about it, oh well, okay? So we're going to learn more about it. So let's look at the role of emotions. And stress. What does stress mean to all of you? What emotions do you think are considered stressful?
Deadlines.
Worry.
Okay, worry,
Frustration.
frustration. What else?
Anger.
Anger. Any other emotions?
Thinking about what's stressful.
Thinking about that. Just thinking about what is stressful, right? Okay. And which part of our body takes the brunt of all these emotions? Like when we have all these negative emotions, what is the price we're paying for these emotions? What happens with these emotions if we don't handle them properly?
Blood pressure?
Yes, absolutely. High blood pressure is one consequence. What are some other consequences? Headaches, muscle aches, tensions, you hold backaches. So many illnesses, almost all illnesses have a stress component. And you know what I say is that traditional factors load the gun. Like for instance in heart disease, traditional factors load the gun. Like, you may say, oh well, stress has nothing to do with it because, I have had high cholesterol, it runs in my family, it's genetics, it's this, it's that. Sure, these are all the traditional risk factors, they load the gun, but what pulls the trigger? It's always stress. And it's not, is it only for heart disease? Are we only talking about heart disease today? I mean, we are because we're in cardiac rehab, but is that the mind-body connection? Does it only have to do with heart disease, you think? Not at all. It has to do with every illness, right? Every illness. It has to do with cancer, IBS, it has to do with fibromyalgia, it has to do with so many illnesses that we don't even think about because we only look at physical
How
stuff.
about lupus and stuff like that?
All illnesses, autoimmune diseases, multiple sclerosis, muscular dystrophy, I mean all kinds of things. Again, the traditional factors load the gun, the stress pulls the trigger, diabetes included. Okay? So today you're going to learn what is that mind-body, connection. Does anybody else know what the physiology does? How many of you know what fight-flight is? I don't want to go into it if you don't know, but if there's even one person who doesn't know, I would like to spend a couple minutes on it. Do you
Yes,
know?
fight or flight, yeah.
Fight or flight. Anybody else know what fight or flight?
I don't know.
You have no idea. I think that's important too. A lot of you don't know. Wow. So okay. So that's a critical piece we're going to talk about a little bit. Okay, just a little bit because then I'll get into other stuff. Fight or flight this is a fascinating thing. We have a computer within our body that has never been updated since the caveman days. Can you imagine that? Like here we are in a world of technology, right? I mean, where every 6 months there's a 0.5, there is a 5.5 version, there's a 6 point something version coming out. Everything's getting updated, everything's getting obsolete, am I right? But the one main thing, which is our computer system, which has to do with our nervous system, is one that dates back to the caveman days. How many thousands of years ago is that? Think about that. And we have the same system. And do you think we're overloading a system that worked that many thousands of years ago? What do you think?
Yeah.
Take a guess. Of course we are, because it wasn't meant to handle the stressors of today. So let's look at the outdated system. Since we have to live with it, it's operating within each one of us every minute of the day. So let's look at that and let's see how we can help it do its job. We'll do our own updating, if you will, to help it along. Bless you.
Thank you.
Okay, how does that sound? Okay, you want to learn how to sort of use it the right way because it's not serving you very well if you don't know how it works and you don't have an update for it. So if you can help it along, wow, wouldn't that be cool? Right? Okay. So what is fight flight? Let's go back to the caveman. what was the one stressor the caveman had? He wasn't worried about bills, he wasn't worried about this and that, and stock market, and unemployment, and all that other stuff. What was he concerned about? One thing.
Wild animals coming after him.
Wild animals coming, and not just coming after him, he had to make the decision for his own survival. So if he encountered an animal, he had to make a very quick decision: do I kill it and eat it for my dinner and my survival? Or do I need to run away from it so that I don't become its dinner? So it was really about, am I going to be dinner or am I going to have dinner? So it's be dinner, have dinner, okay? So this was the thing that he had to constantly worry about. So the system, fight flight, simply means that when the caveman would encounter an animal, immediately a bunch of things would happen in the body, all automatic. That's why we call it an autonomic nervous system. It's not controllable, but automatically things start to happen to help him to make that decision, either to run or to flee from that animal. So what are the things that happen when we're stressed out? What happens to your heart? Let's go down. It beats faster when we're stressed. Why does it beat faster? Anybody know? There's a purpose for everything. Why does it?
Adrenaline?
Adrenaline is the reason that it beats faster, but what is the survival, what is the functionality of it? Why does it need to beat faster? To circulate more blood in your body. Now, which part of your body needs the most blood when you're stressed? Think about that. Which part?
Brain.
Your brain. Okay, we're going to get to it. Which part of your brain? See, these are little keys which are really interesting for you to understand. So I'll get to that in a second. So yes, the brain. What other parts of your body would need this? Your feet. Excellent. Your feet to run away, right? So you feel like, how many times have you felt, your feet, you feel like wobbly knees and you feel that rush of, blood going to your legs, that's to run away. And then what else do you need to fight? Which part of your body do you fight with? Your hands, right? To punch or to throw spears and kill the animal or do whatever you need to do, right? So there's a rush of blood that is being sent to your extremities and to your brain. Which part of your brain? Very critically important. This piece of information, I've done now hundreds of lectures and not one group has this little nugget of information which is so critically important. Because when we think of the brain, we think of just, okay, the brain, that's it, simple, right? No, the brain has many complicated pieces to it. There's something called the prefrontal cortex. This frontal brain, all you need to understand is responsible for memory, analytical thinking, concentration, and problem solving, and language, and all of that comes from this part of the brain. Do we need that for survival?
Yes.
Think about it. In the moment, like a car's coming at you and you need to jump out of the way, do you need problem-solving ability in that moment to save yourself? I don't think so. I don't think so. You don't, because there's no time. For thinking, you need time to weigh the pros and cons and to analyze the situation. We need time. Do we have time when your life is in danger? No. We don't have time. So which part of the brain needs to get geared up to help us to save ourselves? It's called the hindbrain. And it's right in the back of our head, and that's why, think about it, when you're stressed out, you will feel the blood rushing, but it's really going to the back of your brain, and that's called the hindbrain. It's also called the primitive brain, and it's also called the reptilian brain. A reptile is the snake, of course, and the interesting fact is that we are the only type of species which thinks about issues from the, like the past traumas, and we worry about things that happened before and all that. But the animals only think of danger in the moment, and once the danger is past, that's it. They forget about it. So the primitive brain exists in all animals, including the snake. The snake knows enough that if you go towards it, it's going to either recoil and run away, slither away, or it's going to attack. If it thinks that you're really dangerous, it's going to attack you. Otherwise, usually it's going to slither away. Does that make sense? So he only needs one kind of brain. Does he need any analytical thinking and problem-solving skills? He doesn't need it. He doesn't have it. So our primitive brain kicks in when we are stressed out. Now that was fine and dandy for the caveman, right? He needed that for the animals. does that serve you and me a purpose? Yeah, it might serve us a purpose if we're in a dark alley and we're about to be jumped by someone. Yeah, it will serve us really well because you better be running as fast as you can to get out of there, and save yourself. Or if you had to fight back and defend yourself if you have an attacker coming at you, sure. But how many of us have been attacked on a daily basis to need the hindbrain? Think about that. But which brain do we need to help us with our stresses? To help with when you're stressed out over your kids, over your spouse, over your job, over your boss, over this, over that, over the traffic, all the stuff. Which part of the brain is going to help you? We need the frontal brain. But when we're stressed, is it operating? It's not. It's not. That's why, think about it. If you, think of your kids, for instance. If they had exams and the exams, they study really hard and they try to do their best, they show up in the exam room. How many times do you remember when you took exams and suddenly you go blank? You can't remember a single thing and you feel like, oh my God, I should have this information. I studied it, I knew it like this morning, but now the exam paper is in front of me, I can't remember a single thing. Why? Tell me, folks, why, from the information I gave you? Why don't we remember? You're stressed.
You can't.
And the frontal cortex is not getting the blood supply. So we can't think clearly. That's why, because the blood is only going to the back brain, not the front brain. And we need the front brain to make good decisions and to make sensible decisions for ourselves and to act properly and in ways that help us. We need this frontal cortex. This is our rational brain, but it shuts down. And when it shuts down, see, we have this is called the thinking brain. We also have an emotional brain, which simply reacts, right? So in stressful situations, if your thinking brain gets hijacked, folks. And who takes over? Your emotional brain takes over. Let me give you an example. You're driving on 95, right? Everybody's driven on 95. So you know what kind of road that is. It's quite challenging. And so you're driving, and suddenly a guy comes like at 80 or 90 miles per hour, and he cuts you off right in front of you, and he keeps on going. If you allow your frontal cortex to be hijacked and say the emotional brain takes over, which it normally does, because you just got cut off. You're thrown into fight-flight right away, remember? So now the hindbrain takes over, and what does it say? Okay, we've got to go after this guy. We've got to hunt him down and kill him. I mean, not literally, but we were going to tail him. We're going to show him we're not going to take this disrespect on the highways. And then who does this guy think he is? He thinks he owns the roads, and I'm going to show him. So what do? You step on your gas and you start going after him. Now, is that a rational response? Why not?
Dangerous.
It's dangerous from many ways, right? It's dangerous. So, and what is it doing to your heart? If you allow the emotional...
Stress, you go faster.
Now your heart is beating faster. You're breathing faster, shallow breathing to take in more oxygen for purified blood. What's happening to your blood pressure in the morning? It's sky high. Why is it going sky high? Anybody know what that relationship is? Why does the blood pressure go up when your heart beats faster?
The blood pumping?
The blood pumping, but what else happens to your arteries? What's happening to your arteries? They are constricting. Why are they constricting? Because the only way that the blood can go faster is if the artery constricts. We call it arterial spasms. So it goes like this, okay? So it squeezes and it opens, and it squeezes and it opens, and it squeezes and it opens, and so that the blood can be pushed. It's like a pump, so it squeezes and it pushes the blood, and pushes, squeezes and pushes. That's what happens. Now think about it. How does that relate to heart attacks? Anybody know? How does that put us in danger of a heart attack? Anybody know here? Okay, think about it.
It doesn't reach the heart.
Huh?
The blood doesn't reach the heart.
But why? Why does it not reach the heart? That's very good.
Maybe when
Okay.
it's constricting, it's
Like a
not
narrow-
not
Yeah.
opening up again?
Yeah.
And if those arteries are already
Blocked.
partially blocked in some way,
Thank you.
blood's not going to get through.
That's an excellent. All of you are right. So the first point is that the blood is not getting to the heart, but and the second and even more dangerous point is that if you already have some plaque buildup, say you have plaque buildup, so your artery is already narrowed out because you have plaque. And at the narrowest point, one of the dangers is that with the pressure of the blood being pumped up, a piece of the plaque ruptures. You've heard of plaque rupture causing a heart attack? What is that? Because when the artery is going into spasms like that, you have what is called plaque rupture, and when the plaque ruptures, it causes a blockage. And if this artery happens to be the one leading to your heart, like the aorta or any of the other arteries, that's a heart attack. So that's one way that you can have a heart attack. The second way is also very interesting. Remember, our computers are outdated. So for the caveman, he didn't have St. Mary's, he didn't have cardiologists and doctors and all of this. What would happen to this poor guy if he was mauled by a tiger or he got hurt while he was fighting with, whatever animal? What would happen if he kept bleeding and bleeding and bleeding, right? That's no good. We would be an extinct species. They would all be dead by then. So this computer that we have now, the nervous system computer, has what is called a clotting factor. Anybody familiar with what that means? What does that mean? What's a clotting factor?
How quickly your blood will.
Yeah. So when you're stressed, it immediately starts to clump up. It's called platelet clumping. So all the platelets and clots in your blood, they become sticky. The stickiness factor comes in place and they all glue up together to prevent that caveman from bleeding to death. Now we're not cavemen, right? We don't need that to happen to us because we are in a whole different, I'll tell you why in a moment, but what happens is when you have too many clots going through like that, you run the same danger. So over here, it's so narrow and now you have these big clots all clumping up and you can have a blockage. So heart attack is caused either by clots or plaque rupture. Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, how come the caveman was okay with that and we're not? Like, what's with that? Why are we having all this heart attack and other stuff? And how come he was okay? Let me tell you why. For us folks, what happens is, for the caveman, how many times do you think he'd be, for the most part, stressed during the day? How many times? A little bit more than that. Think about when would he be stressed is when he's looking for dinner. So it's dinner time, it's breakfast time, and it's lunch time. Right? Okay, so but his computer worked okay for him. So the reason is, okay, so it's come breakfast time, okay? What happens? He wakes up, he's had a good night's sleep, he wakes up, he comes out of his cave and he goes hunting. And when he goes hunting, oh my God, he sees this big lion or whatever. So immediately his adrenaline and everything starts flowing. He's in fight flight now. Now he's got to run as fast as he can because there's no breakfast. He could become the lion's breakfast. Doesn't want that, so he's running. So what happens is once he passes the lion, he climbs a tree or he runs back into his cave or whatever, the stressor has passed and he's able to come back to normal because this kind of, the increase in heart rate and breathing rate and all that is managed by a part of your brain and nervous system called the sympathetic nervous system. And the other part is called, you don't need to remember all these technical names, but just to help you to understand, there's another part of it's called the parasympathetic nervous system. Are you familiar with that one? That brings all systems back to normal. So once the stressor has passed, the parasympathetic nervous system brings it all back down and the caveman's all happy, now all the stress has gone away. He can manage it because he has a system to manage it. So he goes along his merry way, he stays in his cave, and then maybe along the way he found another little animal, he has a belly full of breakfast and he goes back. Now comes lunchtime, right? So again, oh wow, he sees another animal. This time it's a smaller one, so he knows he can get it, but he has to run really fast to kill it. So again he has another stressful event, and then again the parasympathetic comes in after his lunch and he's okay, and then the same thing happens for dinner. So do you see that there is time between the stressors for him to recuperate and recover? Do you see that? And for him, he didn't need anything else. It was automatic because the system took care of that, because we do have it. I mean, there is a brake and an accelerator. The brake is the parasympathetic that, helps you to slow down and everything else. But our pattern doesn't look like this, does it? Tell me, is this our pattern? Is anybody in this room, can anyone else tell me you only get stressed when it's dinner time and breakfast time? Would be great, right? But no, we don't have that. We have something that's much worse. We have, so you wake up in the morning. I've had patients waking up, they're telling me, when we wake up, Dr. Rao, I'm just in a panic state and I have no idea why. I had these awful dreams and nightmares and God knows what. I am so worried and I don't even know why. My conscious brain said, there's nothing going on in my life, but I wake up like on edge, what's that about? So you may be waking up to whatever's going on in the night, right? And then you say, that's all the dream, I don't have to worry about it. So just as you're starting to calm down, have your cup of coffee, you get another phone call. Now it's your son or daughter, they're having some problem. So you're like, oh my gosh, now what am I going to do? So now, just as you're starting to calm down, another stressor starts up. Then you get to work. Now you're rushing, right? There's another one going on here. Now you're rushing to work. You get to work, now your boss is in a bad mood. And he's really mad at you because you didn't give him some report he wanted. Now, before you can calm down, now you're escalating again. Just then you take care of the boss and you say, okay, that's done. Then you get another something else come. Do you see what I'm saying? What's happening? It's getting stacked. What happens to your parasympathetic nervous system? Is it even able to function?
Yeah.
It doesn't have a chance. It just doesn't have a chance. And so you stay escalated like that, okay? The other interesting thing is, so what happens to the stress levels here? What's happening to your heart rate? What's happening? You may not even feel it. People just start getting used to that level. It's elevated. Your cortisol levels are elevated. And then all non-essential functions come to a standstill. Think about, let me give this funny example. Like if there's a crisis along our borders or something, does the military come to your backyard or does it go to the border patrol? It goes where the trouble is, right? So similarly, they're not needed in our backyards to protect us. They're needed wherever the hot spots are. So similarly, what happens is all non-essential functions in our body shut down. What's considered non-essential when you're stressed out? The blood is only going to the extremities. So your immune system shuts down for those hours that you're stressed, which means it puts you at risk. Why? Because the body is like, if I'm going to be dying, I think my priority needs to be to live and not worry about germs. I need to take care of the animal first before I take care of the germs. Does that make sense? So your immune system shuts down. That's horrible, right? Because then where does it leave us? It leaves us being vulnerable. The other thing that happens is your digestion stops. Why? Because again, who cares about that sandwich you ate or the lunch you ate when your life's on the line? That's what the brain's thinking. Remember, it's the caveman brain. So the caveman says, I don't really care about that food, I just want to live and survive. So digestion stops. When digestion stops, you get IBS problems, indigestion problems, nausea. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Why that happens, and then the sugar levels go skyrocketing high. Why? Because when we're stressed, the body is trying to hold on to energy. And what is energy? Is sugar and carbohydrates. So I have a whole bunch of diabetic patients that I see in the office too, who are on the highest levels of metformin or whatever the other drugs are, and the sugar levels don't come down. Why? Because they're so stressed that your body is holding on to the sugar, even though you're taking medication. Your cholesterol goes up for the same reason. So all non-essential functions stop. Because all the forces, all our military is going to, where the hot spots are. The hot spot is now your extremities and your hindbrain. Does that make sense to everyone, how that all was? So the other interesting thing about the human being is we're the only species, like I said earlier, that holds things, from the past. Like we recreate, and the brain does not distinguish between a stressor that has happened 25 years ago or 50 years ago and what is happening in the moment. It reacts as if it was happening in the moment. So we can, I can make you conjure up, like you've tried, you just conjure up something that upset you from a long time ago. you're going to feel that tightness. You're going to feel that. How many of you can relate to that? Right? All of us can relate to that. I can make you conjure up any horrific incidents from your life and stress you people all out in 3 seconds.
Okay.
You know, which I'm not going to do. So, but the opposite is true too, though. If we can stress ourselves out, why don't we believe that we can unstress ourselves? It's the same brain. Why are we using it to stress ourselves out? If that brain has the capacity to stress itself out, why can't it unstress itself out? We just don't think of it that way. And you're going to learn how in 2 seconds once I'm done. So, the interesting thing about the mind, such a fascinating thing that we have, is that our conscious awareness is only 10% of the awareness. So it's the tip of the iceberg. Is your conscious awareness, which is only 10%, folks. So what you think you know is only 10%. Every other instance in your life that has happened to you is in your subconscious, and it's all it's the 90%. Who do you think drives our actions, behaviors, and personality? Which part of this? The conscious brain or the subconscious? It's the subconscious, past experiences. So if there was a trauma let me give an example. If there was a trauma that happened when you were in 1st grade and a teacher called on you and you didn't have the answer, and that trauma can lead to, I've had patients who will say, I am deathly afraid of public speaking. So they'll say, so why? I don't know why. My job requires it, but I freak out every time I'm expected to face a crowd. I have no idea why. I just feel people are laughing at me, or I'm going to stutter or stammer, or I just feel that people are going to criticize me or not like what I have to say, or they're going to think I'm incompetent or something. Where's that coming from? And when I look at the history, boom, we start uncovering that maybe in 1st grade something happened that created that little trauma. And then now you keep attracting that trauma over time. The person may not even be aware of that. So where is that behavior coming from? It triggers off. So when you're in circumstances, when you're facing a group, it just triggers off that old stressor that is lurking in your subconscious. Does that make sense to everybody here? And that could be fear of rejection, that could be control, that could be anything that has happened will trigger off in the present moment, because it triggers off the memory of that. Why? Because the subconscious is like this recorder that I have right here, which is that it records everything. Everything is recorded. But folks, can you imagine if we were aware of every incident in our lives? We'd be like basket cases. I wouldn't want to get out of bed, None of us would if your brain was bombarded with all this information. We can't survive like that. So what does the brain do? It puts a lid. It puts a lid under this and keeps it down. So when we have all these emotions and stressful emotions, we have 2 choices. We can either push it down and say, oh, I'm not going to think about that. I'm not going to worry about that, and go forwards. But if we do that, who's carrying the brunt of that baggage? Tell me. Which part of your body holds it? It's your heart that holds on to it. It's your heart that is the seat of emotion that holds on. And it's also every cell in your body that holds on to all of that stuff. So it's so important to let go of these things, because these create so much stress. Do you understand why? Because it comes out in dreams, it comes out in, just feeling tense, and a lot of the times people don't even know why you're tense, or why you're angry all the time, or why you're depressed, or sad, or why you're getting sick all the time. But these are little clues that tell us, okay, there's something going on, that there's some imbalance going on, so let's get it back in place. Does that make sense? Everybody with me? Any questions so far? Okay, so,
I have a question. When you're talking about, say, something that happened in your childhood, is it possible for, when you remember that, to accentuate, like make it a bigger deal than what it was originally? It builds up through years and years and years.
It
you
could
think something
be.
was relatively small, but now it's magnified?
It could be if it's not resolved. If you don't just talk about it and let it all out and let it go, then yes. Then because over time your perception changes. It's all about perceptions, and I'm going to get into that in a second. So your perception could distort that memory, because now remember, the conscious brain is interpreting what was recorded. Now the recording is as is. It's not doing any interpretation. But the conscious brain, when you bring it up to the fore and lots of time has passed, your conscious brain might interpret it as God knows how, right? So it's important to look at that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So what do you do with all of this? Does this mean that we just sit and say, oh my God, we're just destined for stress and heart attacks? Well, then what am I doing here? I'd be, I would have no role if that was where I was going to end my lecture. I shouldn't even be here, right? So there's a reason why I'm here. So let's see what that reason is. So I'm going to tell you how we can do this. So for instance, let me start with that example I gave you with being cut off, by someone and being so angry. There's always judgment that we put on. When something negative happens to us, we judge that person, or we look to blame others or ourselves. We turn that judgment towards ourselves or to that other person. So if someone cuts you off, for instance, you're getting all mad and you allow your emotional brain to hijack your thinking brain and do all that, and it leaves you in deep trouble. Am I right? It's irrational decisions, and when you react out of your emotional self rather than your thinking brain, you just don't make good decisions, because that brain is not capable of good decisions. Okay? So what can we do about that? So let me give you an example. Dr. Albert Ellis is a very famous psychologist, and along with Dr. Aaron Beck, these are two famous psychologists who came up with this theory of how does the mind work, and came up with this wonderful way of helping ourselves to stop this stress process and control stress, and it's called cognitive restructuring. Cognitive restructuring. So Dr. Ellis came up with this little formula, okay? So A plus B equals C. Well, what in the world does that mean? Looks like we're back in kindergarten here. So A is your activating event, okay? B is your belief, and C is consequence. So this is one technique that I'm going to show you. So A is the activating event, which is being cut off on the road. It could be anything. It could be the rain. It could be, I told you. So activating event is just a neutral thing. Everything and anything can be an activating event. You get that, right, everybody? Okay. So A is activating event. And then C, think of C. So the person who's cut off by somebody on I-95, now he's furious. So now let's just give an example. Consequences, you're furious, and you're now going to tail the person, and you're going to charge after them. And if you have a gun, maybe you will, brandish your gun and say, I'm going to show you, teach you a lesson, and all that. And if that person is, why are you acting crazy on 95? Like if that person was asked, he might say, that guy over there, who the heck does he think he is? He went, he just cut me off, and he thinks he owns the roadways, and he has no right to do that, okay? So this guy thinks that it's the activating event that caused him to be furious, out of control, angry, and filled with rage. Now, is that the truth?
No.
Because if that were the truth, how many of you would charge after a driver? Maybe some of you would, and some of you wouldn't, right? Who wouldn't? Tell me who wouldn't. Why would you not? What would you say to yourself? Because we're constantly talking to ourselves. It's called self-talk, which we don't even know we're doing. So what would you say to yourself that would prevent you from driving after him?
I'd be scared they're gonna come after me.
Okay, so you would be scared he would come after you, and you would just say, oh, no big deal. No big deal. Anybody else? Like,
You
what
never
would be
know their
going through your mind?
circumstances. Everyone's situation is different. They could be rushing because they have to go there, their mother's sick,
Right.
child's sick. So it only took a while before you realize that maybe it's not just they're trying to cut you off and piss you off. They're just, they have an emergency on their own.
I
They wanna
love
take care of it.
your answer. That's great. And I will give you an example to fit into that. How many of you are familiar with Dr. Stephen Covey, who wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Yeah. So he wrote in his book an example, and forgive me if I don't have the exact details, but this is just to make a point. So Covey was on a subway train or something in New York, going somewhere, and at one train station, this man came on board with 5 of his kids. And these kids created the biggest ruckus on that, their compartment. They were completely out of control. They were aggressive, they were kicking each other, they were just like rambunctious. And it was annoying the heck out of all the people in that compartment because, they were tired, they wanted to get to their destination. Who needs to be bothering with, being harassed by these kids? But nobody was saying anything because, everyone feels a little embarrassed. The father is there, he's not saying a word, he's just sitting with his head down. So finally, Cubby had it. So Cubby went up to him and he said, "Excuse me, sir, your children have been completely out of control for the last half an hour and you don't seem to be doing anything. Could you please just, take charge of your kids and sort of get some control back?" And the guy lifted his head up and he said, "They just lost their mother an hour ago. We just left the hospital. She died suddenly." And so they are, so the kids were a mess because they had just lost mommy, and he was a mess. He'd lost his wife. It was all sudden. Immediately, what do you think Cubby felt? What are you feeling as I told you this story about the guy?
Terrible.
Feel guilty, right? Feel guilty for judging him.
Judgmental.
Yeah, because we all judged him, didn't we?
Yeah.
As I was telling you the story, you're like, oh my God, what kind of parent is that guy, right? We all sort of like, we're all like self-righteous, what kind of parenting and what kind of guy. But the minute we heard the guy had just lost his wife, look, the energy changed in the room. All of us, just like, even as I'm telling you the story, our energy just went on like, oh my God. And so Cubby jumped up and, tried to say, "Oh my goodness, do you need me to call someone? I can take your kids and keep them for you for, a couple hours or whatever." He just started, offered his help. Other people were stunned, everybody. Then you saw the whole situation differently. So that's the example, and thank you for your example because that's, you just, with my story I demonstrated your point, right? Because we don't know what's going on in other people's lives, but we're so quick to judge, right? And who does the judgment hurt? Think about that one. Who does it hurt? Hurts us. Hurts us because we're out of control. We have now gotten into fight flight, which means our heart is taking the brunt of it. And does it change anything?
No.
Does it stop the person who just cut off someone? No, they did their thing. Whether they did it because they were drunk and on drugs or whether they did it because they had some place to get to and they were in a crisis situation, who knows? The fact is, we are left holding on to the baggage that hurts us. And how many of us even stop to think about that? Right? We don't. We just keep on going and being judgmental about other people, then it hurts us. So Dr. Ellis says, so the real shift needs to occur at B. B is the belief you have, and which is really another word for judgment and another word for self-talk, because we're constantly talking to ourselves, not talking to ourselves like, like a person who has issues, not that way, but we're constantly evaluating, and a lot of it is subconsciously evaluating according to our old belief systems. So if you grew up in a family that said children should be seen and not heard, say that was your belief system you grew up with, oh my God, that guy on the train would drive you crazy because he would go against your belief systems. You say, what kind of parent is this that allows his kids to be out of control? If you are a parent who was, if you're a person who grew up in a more, kids will be kids, let them do whatever, it's not going to bother you. It's not going to be any different than it was in your own household. So you're not going to worry about it. So it depends on our belief systems and values and experiences. So do you see how much the mind plays a role? And we're not even aware of this computer in the brain that does this. So Dr. Ellis says, whenever you have a situation and you have a gut reaction, you know that your thinking brain has been hijacked. So as soon as it's hijacked, don't let it keep running like a runaway train because it's going to crash. It's going to crash you in the process. Stop and do something and start disputing. Now his way of doing it is to dispute those negative thoughts. And you dispute the negative thoughts. And you did that very well when you said, you have to stop and think, maybe the guy had a reason why he was rushing fast. Maybe, there was some reason and it's not for me to do that, right? How do we do it? The way to do that is to take 10 deep breaths, one of the many ways. You take 10 deep breaths, because when you deep breathe, what happens? Tell me, what do you think breathing does when it relaxes you? And when you relax, when you get relaxed, your brain calls off the forces, if you will, which means the cortisol, the adrenaline, all that stuff that's pumping, it starts to abate. Your heart starts to, come down, like it doesn't pump at the ferocious rate that it was. And when you do that, where do you think the blood is going to start flowing back again? Which part of your head do you need it now? And so when the stress levels go down, everything becomes normal and the blood goes back to where you need it for rational decision making, which is up here. And so you take back control and bring the thinking brain back into power and back in the driver's seat. And you don't allow the emotional brain to keep hijacking and being a runaway train. How many of you are with me on this? Isn't that fascinating? When you understand, so next time you have that gut going like this, instead of blaming it on, the guy cut me off, there was traffic is making me mad, my boss is making me mad, the stock market is making me mad, the weather's making me mad. Stop and say, no, it's your perception and belief about the activating event that is making you mad. It's got nothing to do with the event. It's got to do with what you're telling yourself about the event. And if you can just breathe or do something to step back and say, okay, how can I get my thinking brain back? You will have a completely different response and your heart will thank you for it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Somebody said to me, oh yeah, but that's easier said than done. Of course it is. But let me ask you, how many of you have done something difficult in your life because you really wanted the rewards at the end of it? How many of you can tell me you never have? Have you always taken the easy route? Think about it. For women, childbirth. You want a baby, but having a baby is the most painful thing one can go through, but we all do it, right? Why? Because you want that end result. How many of you have pushed in your careers, the men? How many, I'm saying men just as a contrast to the women, since you don't have to go through childbirth, but how many of you have pushed through, how many of you have maybe worked 3 jobs or, to get food on the table, or how many of you have really pushed for that other, a better opportunity, a better job, things that were hard, or worked late, or done whatever it took? How many of you have not done this? Tell me. I don't think there's a single human being. And what is the motivator? Because we want that reward. So, my answer to those who say, well, it's easier said than done, yes, and it is your choice. Does that make sense? If you want that good health, and if you want to, stay healthy and protect your heart and not have all these emotions hijacking your health, if that's worth it to you, then you will do what's difficult and make it easy for yourself. And just do it despite it being difficult. And if it's not that important, then you're going to say, it's easier said than done, and forget about it, right? So it really comes back to what? Choice. As for everything else. No pain, no gain. So it's not that easy. There's no magic wand that anyone can, because life happens and stress is, everybody has stress. So having said that, so this is one technique that I really would appreciate if you use. The second thing is called mindfulness. How many of you are aware of what is mindfulness? When people hear the word mindfulness meditation, people are like, oh yeah, I can't be like that yogi. I don't have time to be, do meditation, all that Eastern philosophy. That's for the birds, not for me. I know it helps, but I don't have time. So don't tell me to meditate. Okay. Well, how about if I don't tell you to meditate, but I ask you to be mindful? Would that be all right with you? Would that be? Because I don't meditate either. I'll be honest with you. Like the traditional meditation where you sit in a corner and do all that. I too don't have the time to do that. However, what I do is mindfulness is when you stay in the moment with whatever activity you're doing, whether it's washing. How many of you wash dishes? Okay. How many of you mow the lawn? How many of you vacuum? How many of you drive? How many of you cook? So don't tell me you don't have time to be mindful. We do all of these things, but what do we do when we're doing these mundane things? Where's your mind at?
Thinking
Your
of
mind
four
is
other
in
things.
60 other things. And is it in very good places? Our mind never goes to good places. Okay? It's always worrying. It's either worrying about the what if, oh my God, I have to do this, how am I going to get this? We're always worrying about the future, or we are regretting the past. So when we feel angry, this is a little trick for you. When you find yourself feeling angry, know that you are engaging in woulda, coulda, shoulda thinking. I should have done this, or someone else should have done this. It's all the shoulds come up. You feel mad. When you feel anxious, you're engaging in what kind of thinking? What if thinking. And worrying about the future. So the future brings us anxiety, and the past brings us anger and depression. Okay? So where do you need to be?
In the moment.
In the moment, folks. That's what mindfulness is all about. Now, how many of you have heard this wonderful thing that says, the past is history, the future is a mystery, the present, today is a gift, and that's why it's called a present. So what I say to people is, I put it a little differently, what is yesterday, folks? Think about it. When we were in yesterday, it was a today. And when we're in tomorrow, it becomes a today yet to come, and yesterday is a today that just passed. So we're chasing moonshine, aren't we? But we're worried about a concept. Yesterday is a concept because we didn't do anything about it when we were in it. Can anyone tell me if there is a yesterday? Is there a place called yesterday? Of course not. It's in our head, right? Because we just bypassed today, and when it passed by us, we started regretting it, and we live in the past. But when we are in the moment, we are worried about the future, which is a today yet to come. So we're like toggling back and forth between a today that has passed and a today that's yet to come. And yet here is a wonderful today right now, and we don't do anything about it. We let it go. We waste it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So right now I'm going to teach you a mindfulness exercise, which I hope will bring you in 2 minutes to just where you need to be, which is where?
Here.
Yes. Now, okay? So you can either keep your eyes open or closed, and I'd like you to just, mindfulness has to do with attention, the 3 A's, attention, awareness, and acceptance of the moment. And the only time that you can have attention, awareness, and acceptance is in the moment. So I'd like you to start with just putting your attention on your left foot, and just, you don't do anything with it, just pay attention, be aware. What's going on in your left foot? Maybe it's feel the contact between your foot and your sock, and the sock and the shoe and the ground. Just feel the points of contact. And just see, do you feel a little twitch, a little itch, whatever. Just pay attention. And now shift that attention to your right foot very slowly, and see what's going on there. Just pay attention. And slowly bring your attention up to your stomach, your abdomen area, your lower back, that whole area. Just pay attention to all the points of contact with the chair, with the back of the chair, the bottom of the chair. How it feels. Is it hard? Is it soft? Look into your abdomen. How does that feel? Do you feel full or hungry or now slowly move your attention up to your heart area and all around your chest, your heart, your upper back, and see what that feels like. And see, do you feel warmth? Is your heart beating softly? Or is it a harder beat? What's going on? And finally, just bring your attention up towards your head, your face, your neck. Just focus on your breathing. Don't do anything to it, just observe it. Is your breath warm? Is it cold? Are you breathing from your left nostril or your right nostril? Simply pay attention. And just stay there for 30 seconds and then I'll ask you to come back. Okay. You can come back. Any comments on that experience?
My thing turned from green to brown, what's up with that?
Right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Were you focusing or were there thoughts that went through your mind?
I thought I was focusing, but I guess maybe not.
See, we're so not used to doing nothing that becomes stressful sometimes till you learn to
I do
not
have
do
a
it.
hard time doing that
Exactly.
kind of stuff.
Exactly. So that's why it turned brown. Isn't that interesting? So that's telling you that you need to work on that some, because this is the hardest thing that we can do and the most powerful and the most beneficial and yet the hardest. And thank you for that, for sharing that, because your
And I know I
Dr.
have a
Brown.
problem with that.
Exactly, and that just proved it to you. But please don't say, oh, I have a problem with it and therefore I shouldn't be doing
No,
it.
I need to work on it,
Yeah,
right.
you need that, it's telling you that you need to work on that part of it. So take it as an opportunity to simply be, because we're in a culture and in the world today where it's all about doing. It's not about being, right? You're judged by what you accomplished, what you did, what you have, where you're going. It's everybody wants to know that. They don't want to know about being, and that's a very it's a new idea, a new concept for us to really, concentrate on just being.
Yeah, we're human doings instead of
Yeah.
human beings.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not human doings, right? You're right, we're human beings.
Do you think that women have more of a hard time doing that since I seem to think women multitask more than men do. Men seem to have like, all right, now I'm gonna do this and that's what I'm gonna do. But women are like, I'm gonna do this, but I have to do this too.
Me too. That's just our
But
own
but
mindset.
men are very hard driven as well.
Mhm. I'm
So-
not saying they're not driven, but they're driven on one
The-
task at a
right.
time more.
But it just depends
No,
on the
no, it's so sorry.
personality. But it depends on the personalities. Like those people who are constantly doers and goers find this very difficult.
Yeah.
You can shut down and leave if you have to.
No, I'm okay. Got a few more minutes.
So, does that make sense? But that was an excellent point you brought up. So just really, and so we just proved how difficult it can be, and yet, if you just do it, and all you need is to start with 2 minutes, if that's all you can do, and you have many more than 2 minutes, like I really advise you on your way home, when you're driving, don't just drive and have your mind in 10,000 places. Drive and just drive. That's it. And see what you will be amazed. The whole route will look
right.
different. You will find places on your regular route that you never knew existed. You'll see a house and trees and bushes that you never knew existed. Can you buy that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why? Because we never pay attention. We're multitasking. When you do your dishes, that's how I do it. Like I love doing dishes. That kind of sounds weird, but I do because I like the warmth on my hands, like hand washing. I find that very relaxing, and I just concentrate on the dishes, and that gives you such a tremendous. So those of us who feel we don't have time, we have plenty of time. We're doing all these things. If you just didn't allow because that's when our mind gets hijacked. Is when you're doing mundane things, your mind gets hijacked to this, and this. But if you can just bring it back to the task at hand. Whatever you're doing, you have plenty of time. You have hours in a day that you can be mindful. Eating too. I remember when I was trained by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, who's really he does a lot of training in stress management using mindfulness meditation. He's got a phenomenal clinic, a center up in Boston and stuff. He teaches us to eat one raisin at a time and just enjoy it. And I'd never done that. and you savor it, you feel, you swish it around, it's like wine tasting, and you just feel the difference. And we gobble our food, and we miss out on such wonderful flavors, right? We just are so busy eating and talking and watching TV that we miss out on that wonderful opportunity. So life is filled with everyday opportunities. And those of you who may have some trouble with sleeping at night, this is a great technique to use that time rather than worrying about why can't I sleep and popping an Ambien. Just be mindful. Start with the bottom of your feet. It's called body scan, what I helped you to do just now, body scan. And just scan it. And before you know it, you're going to fall asleep because it keeps you in the present moment. Otherwise, your mind will hijack you again to all the things you need to worry about, and that kills the sleep right away. Okay, so I hope this was helpful to all of you.
Very helpful.
Yeah.
Very,
Thank you. Thank you.
And I thank you all for coming
Thank
out.
you.
If I will stick around if you have any quick questions, and I wish you all the very best.
Is that something?
Thank you.